Well, by popular demand, here it is. We are reviewing the 2025 Nissan Armada Pro 4X. In my latest GX550 video, this was probably one of the most requested cars to just see or recommended. And admittedly, I had not driven one up until now, so I thought, let's get a tester, let's give it a full review, and let's share our thoughts. I specifically want to cover three main points that I haven't heard any other reviewer cover. The 3 points that I think are interesting to cover are derived from, obviously, me having experience with trucks of this price and size, a number of them at this point now. The other thing, I've spent a lot of miles driving this now, so I'm very comfortable in the car. I've learned a lot about it. Then lastly, and maybe most importantly, I spent a lot of time on the owners groups, both on Facebook and the forums. You can learn a ton of information from those owner groups, and I've spent a lot of time there, absorbed a lot of what the owners are saying, and I'm going to share it with you. All right, let's get in for a drive and discuss. So the first point that I'll lead off with is the Armada, regardless of trim, is on sale right now. If you go and you look across the automotive industry at full-size trucks and SUVs, very difficult to get anything off MSRP. Currently, and specifically to the Pro 4X, but I believe this is true on other trims, you can get as far as $10,000 off. Now, the Pro 4X is a higher trim level. It's, in the 80s from a sticker standpoint, so there's more there to give. But looking at owners groups, there are deals being made in different parts of the country for 10 grand off. Now, what's the flip side of that? Well, the flip side is that is the signal for depreciation. So one of the risks of getting the Nissan versus a Sequoia, or even a diesel Tahoe, diesel Yukon, or even a Ford Expedition, is you're going to have aggressive depreciation. Now, you'll still have aggressive depreciation really on everything I just mentioned except the Sequoia. But I think the risk with Nissan is that it's more aggressive than really anything else. And that's getting signaled a little bit with that on sale price. So the question is, do you want to take the discount up front or kind of swallow a little bit hard in 5-10 years whenever you end up selling this? If you're keeping it for 10 years, who really cares about the depreciation? But it's something to think about, but no one's talking about how right now they're on sale. The next point that I'll also kind of combine into two is 2026 updates / common issues experienced by owners. So the first 2026 update is in response to somewhat of a common issue experienced by owners, which has to do with the garage door opening system. Nissan uses an app basically to open garage doors called MyQ Garage Door. That is being replaced by HomeLink. I think, and I even think about like my doors, for example. My garage doors are kind of ancient, so I'm not sure the app would work on mine. I know HomeLink does. So hard to say, but it's a little more of a clunky interface. You can access it through the infotainment, but it's clunky. It's not the greatest system, and they're responding to that and changing that with HomeLink, which I think is a good update. The other common issue that is not unique to Nissan, I've seen that around a lot, is interference with CarPlay, trying to figure out, you'll get in your car, your phone will hook up to CarPlay or Android Auto, and then you'll lose all audio. You can't switch around to Sirius, whatever. The system just kind of gets nuked and you have to do a hard reset. Some have had issues a little bit beyond that where I don't know if they're disconnecting the battery or they take it in for service to get it fixed, but some audio issues related to CarPlay integration, which, I think as car makers build software around the software from the phone manufacturers, it gets a little complicated and there's issues. I know friends with not the newest Lincoln that I just reviewed, but another family member with the Lincoln Navigator has had plenty of issues with CarPlay integration. I've heard it from a lot of people, so it's not unique to the Nissan, but still worth noting as an issue. All right, our Tim Hortons test is in progress here. But the only other issue I've heard owners talk about with the Armada is the Pro Pilot system, which is basically Nissan's lane keeping, a little bit of self-driving system. The Toyota Sequoia does this much better. Toyota's drive and self-driving capabilities, sort of driver assist capabilities, are much more advanced than Nissan. So that is one very clear area where the Sequoia is superior. They are pushing over-the-air software updates for ProPilot. So I know, we were recently on, I think, version 1.4, version 2.1, I believe, is coming out. So they are continuing to work on it and improve it. But that is something that versus the competition, the driver aids, driver assist, it probably does lag. The only other 2026 update specific to the Pro 4X trim, but really the only other substantial 2026 update across the entire Armada line, is the addition of captain seats for the Pro 4X. It only is available with a bench and then a third row bench as well. So that second row bench is going to be available to be optioned as captain seats. So in terms of issues, that's really the exhaustive list. Looking at all the owners groups, there hasn't been anything really mechanical that's been noted. I have noted some fit and finish issues, I'll call them. This interior is wonderfully nice. It's much nicer and much more luxurious than the Sequoia. And I think this really battles up market, even up to like a GMC AT4 Yukon Ultimate, which is a $100,000 truck. I think this interior competes with that. I genuinely do. But in terms of fit and finish, there is some minor quibbles in here, which I'll show in a minute. Even from a design perspective, the center stack with piano black, well, who cares? But yeah, it is going to get super fingerprinted and nasty. That's one of the issues with that. The other thing, which is kind of interesting, is the screen is not totally lined up with the center stack. I think from a symmetrical and just interior presentation perspective, if this center screen was shifted over to be lined up, really to terminate at the end of this center stack, it would look much prettier. So you'd probably need another inch of screen there just to get that done. But overall, I think it's important to say this is not the Nissan of yesteryear. Or maybe I should say this is the Nissan of yesteryear, where they're making great cars again. This Armada is impressive. The powertrain is ultra silky smooth. The shifts are smooth. It's quiet. There's acoustic glass. There's sound deadening materials that you can see even in the wheel wells. The interior materials, soft touch everywhere. Again, it competes above its price class, which is so rare nowadays in the automotive sector. And the other thing I would say, Kia and Hyundai tend to do this, where they'll put a nice interior in a car, but the mechanicals are just garbage, or they're really not very good. So you're really kind of buying the car and paying for the interior. That is not the case with the Armada. Not only do you get the nice interior, but you get the legitimate bona fide mechanicals on top of that, which include the locking differential, which have the GTR-based engine, the air suspension, the beefy sway bar, lower control arms, skid plates, everything. It's the real deal. And it drives like that. I think when you drive a Hyundai or Kia, you can kind of expose the limited nature of the mechanicals, whereas this Armada feels bold, and it's a global product. It's the Patrol. And that actually leads me to my third point. People mention this, but I don't think they hit on it where it needs to be hit on, which is that the Nissan Armada is a global product. It is sold overseas as the Nissan Patrol and competes directly with the full-size Land Cruiser, the LC300, which we do not get unless you go for an LX600 or LX700H from Lexus. Despite this being a global product, it is still a good size for American roads. It's basically Tahoe-sized, a little bit smaller. But, it's interesting with the Lexus LX600, 700H, and overseas, again, the Land Cruiser LC300, not the Land Cruiser on sale in the United States and Canada. That is particularly smaller than this Nissan Armada, Nissan Patrol. And Toyota even addresses that, saying that it's optimized. The size is optimized for the trail. But the reality is, most people aren't taking these on narrow trails. Even if you are off-roading it, you're doing it kind of like I'm doing. Like you take it on sand on the beach, or you got deep snow up to ski country. Some people, of course, do the overlanding thing. They take it, off the beaten path. But narrow trail riding paths, it's a very, very limited group of people who are doing that. And then even then, this is more narrow than the Sequoia, which I have a comparison video coming out soon, so stay tuned for that. But this is more narrow than the Sequoia, which is not a global product, and that's why. As a global product, I'm so impressed with Nissan that they didn't really skimp away from size. It's features packed, and it works really well on the American roads, despite it being a global product. Again, I think so many car manufacturers, they might build some North American specific trucks, and those tend to be very, very large. But the other global products, or if something is marketed as a global product and it's sold here, it tends to be undersized, especially from a truck and SUV perspective, for the American roads. Now that we've covered the 3 points of the fact that the Armada is on sale / depreciation, the 2026 updates / common owner issues, and the excellent execution of a global product sold in the US, just want to give overall thoughts here in terms of living with the Armada for a few days. I am really impressed, and I did not expect to like this just based on Nissan's reputation, and shame on me for that. But, you know, I've been a Toyota and Lexus guy for a really long time, so that's what I've been used to, and that's what I know and love. Part of that is a value proposition of insane residual values and a great ownership experience. Overall, I've never had any issues with my Lexus or Toyota products that have stranded me or anything greater than a very minor quibble. When you get into Nissan, and Nissan has this reputation now, right, that they're really sold for basic transportation. The CVT transmission was a disaster. You know, they've kind of lost their way. They scrapped the GTR after many years. The new Z isn't really selling well, even though it looks pretty cool, right? It's not selling well. And then the other Nissans you see on the road are kind of uninspiring. But you get into the Armada, which is a flagship product, and it just feels really good. It feels much more upmarket than the Sequoia at the same price, sticker price, which again, this is going to be several thousand cheaper. It feels much more upmarket than the Sequoia. You're not losing a ton of capability. In fact, I think from a daily driving perspective and capability perspective, the kind of automatic four-wheel drive on the Armada versus the Sequoia, where you have to manually engage four-wheel drive, you know, in a conventional truck format, it's nice to have the full-time four-wheel drive or the auto four-wheel drive. The powertrain is just ultra smooth. It's super quiet in here. The interior fit and finish is excellent. It's super, super quiet. The shifts are quick. The engine is powerful. You know, it's got over 400 horsepower, over 500 torque. That's plenty. You don't need more than that. And there's soft touch everywhere. You know, so this is, again, I think this, from an interior perspective, is equivalent to a $100,000 GMC Yukon. People will complain about that, but it's true. It's 100% true. Ask me how I know why. And obviously on the Armada, you know, okay, you don't get the full benefit of, like, on the Yukon Ultimates, which are $100,000, the AT4 Ultimate, you know, they get the in-seat entertainment in the back. Okay, yeah, you don't get that. You don't get massaging seats. That's the difference. Everything else is of the same quality. In terms of things I don't like, the buttons to shift are annoying. That's a terrible feature. It should always be on the stock or in the center as a conventional shifter. I hate the buttons to shift. The Navigator has that too. Other products have that. I just think it's a dumb design. I don't like it. And then because that's piano black, that's going to get fingerprinted all the time, and you're touching that button every single day. So that's negative. Very minor point here, but just worth pointing out. The screens are beautiful and they're very high gloss, but as a result, you get a bit of reflection, which you can see in my speedometer, my left-hand screen right now. You can see my reflection in there. That's, you know, not ideal. I guess, you know, the screens in the Toyota and Lexus are a little more flat. The gloss looks prettier. It's nicer to look at, just like from a bystander perspective, looks closer to like a high-end TV display versus these digital car gauges. But the issue, again, is that when the sun's shining on it, or even just in general, like I'm getting kind of indirect sun right now. I'm getting sun on me, but not on the gauges. There's a lot of reflection. And again, two super nitpicky things. And the reason that I'm pointing out that they're nitpicky is this speaks to how good this truck is. I'm not finding major issues, guys. I am not finding anything that would prevent me from buying this. It is truly, truly good. It is truly an excellently executed truck and SUV. But the trailer brake looks a little wonky. It just looks like a parts bin piece. Okay, I know. Who cares, right? The rest of this interior is totally upmarket. That's such a minor part, the trailer brake. Totally fair. I totally agree. Just looking for things at this point that stand out to me as negatives because this Armada is so well done. Yeah, I was just driving around a little more, just at speed, you know, 50 miles an hour. So yeah, not highway speed totally. But it just struck me how quiet this car is. No music. I wasn't recording. Just listening to the car. It's quiet. It's Lexus quiet. The GX 550 wasn't that way. It's been a while since I've been behind the wheel of an LX, so I'll have to do that. But this is just really impressive, and it's clearly batting above its sticker. So my only other criticism here, the panoramic sunroof is a bit unfinished in the second row. When you look at the first row, there's a gasket. Now that gasket is for operation because that first part of the sunroof actually opens up and you can actuate it as a normal sunroof. But On the Sequoia or other competitors, this area right here is a finished area. So right here, there should be a type of gasket or a piece of plastic or something just to cover up the bolts and the manufacturing welds there. That is covered in all other trucks and SUVs I've tested except the Armada. So with that, if you're in the market for a full-size SUV, you have to do yourself a favor and look at the 2025 Armada. I thought it was a ridiculous proposition. It's not. This is a great truck. I think if you get behind the wheel of one, it will surprise you just like it surprised me. And I highly suggest each and every one of you check it out for yourself. It's excellent. So as always, appreciate all the likes, subscriptions, and comments. I enjoy engaging with each and every one of you. Hope you stick around and subscribe and see what else we got going on the channel. Coming up soon is the Armada versus the Sequoia, a direct comparison.